Justin, good to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Brian, great to be here, man. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to carve a little time out of your day to come on the podcast. And it's so funny. I don't know if you get this with other folks, and I wonder if you feel this kind of like this celebrity type. I mean, I've been following your journey for like 5, 6 years. I've been reading your newsletter for many years. So it's kind of interesting to have you on here. Do you ever get that feeling from other folks? It's like, oh, I feel like I know you so well, and you're like, I don't know anything about you because I haven't met you before.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's part of the one of the cool things that happens just from sort of documenting your life and your business journey is especially I think when you're not really carving out like a character, you're sort of being more vulnerable.
Mm,
Um, and so by being vulnerable, I think I give people the sense that um, you know maybe I'm there with them in the room or we're close, and that's my hope, right? Like my hope is that there's some closeness that comes through in both the newsletter, anytime I'm on a podcast. I want readers to feel like they know who I am as a person. And so it doesn't bother me. It's part of how I write and how I try and communicate. And I find the same when I meet people whose journeys I follow, right? Whether it's a guest on their podcast or meeting them in person at a book signing or something like that. I think that's cool. I think
yeah.
putting an arm's distance between yourself and everybody else, feels like, I guess, a little bit less authentic, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I was obviously I read the newsletter almost every week. I'm sure I missed a few here and there, but I love this idea because you're talking about your Q1 goals and trying to change some stuff as you went out to California for a few months. Can you share a little bit? You were talking about doing this whole brewery idea you had as a massive goal. You never started. Can you share a little bit about that story and kind of how Q1's going with it?
Yeah, yeah. I to give some context, I wrote in a newsletter about how I often get asked on podcasts, sort of what's next for me, and I flippantly say like maybe I'll start a brewery as kind of like a joke, but there's some seriousness behind it, which is I've always thought that was an interesting idea. I'm not talking about some big massive brewery, but just like a little nano brewery, in a
Yeah.
small town like where I live, and I say it as like a guard, right? And by flippantly saying it, it kind of keeps it at arm's distance, right? I don't have to really pretend. I can kind of pretend like it's a thing I'm going to do. But part of my goal in Q1 was to maybe take a baby step towards that. So I'm out here in California for 3 months with my wife, getting away from the winter. And part of what I want to do here is just simply brew my first batch of beer. Now, I have
Yeah.
not done that quite yet,
Yeah.
which is a failure on my part. And I make excuses like we all make excuses about something that
Right.
we want to do, right? Oh, it's not the timing's not right, or I'm just discovering the place, or I got to get settled in, or whatever it might be. But it is something I absolutely want to do, because what I have found in my life, at least, or in my journey, is that I have these grand visions and goals, and they become so difficult until like you push the first domino. And
Yeah.
so for me, it's like brewing that first batch of beer is a first domino, and I think it'll
Yeah.
knock over that second one, that third one, and then go for a while. And so, absolutely something I want to do. This podcast is something that will be another mechanism that holds me accountable, which is nice.
Yeah.
But failure so far, at least from
Yeah.
taking the first step.
Well, it is called the Just Get Started podcast, so maybe that's the motivation to jump. And I
Perfect
know it's
time.
not just motivation. To your point, it's kind of like you just have to take that. It's really action. I like how James Clear, something he always said that was really interesting was like action creates mood. And it's taking that action that actually really gets that ball rolling down the hill. It's not like, oh my god, I got to be in the right mood.
Yeah, and I think it's I think a lot of people think of it the other way around. They think
Hmm.
like I have to build up some sort of, I guess, momentum, for lack of a better term, and then by building momentum, I will then at some point take action. And it's just that's the reverse, right? Like you
Yeah.
have to like uncomfortably do something. And if you uncomfortably do something, that creates the momentum. And oftentimes, like I said, it's just that first domino. And so
Yeah.
thank you for reminding me of it. It's a great podcast name. And so it's well tuned with that mission. So a good
Yeah.
reminder.
I want to ask you something. Again, just kind of observing your writing in recent months in this past year, and you kind of touched on obviously the vulnerability and getting people in. Have you changed how you write? I've noticed a lot more like deeper storytelling, more like holistic perspective. Maybe I don't know if that's the best word. I'm pulling it out of the. It's like I know you do a lot of tactical stuff well, but I really like it by the way. I like how the stories, it kind of pulls you in. Have you been thoughtful about that? Is it a point in your life has changed? I'm kind of curious how you think about it.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for noticing. That means a lot. I think it's really cool when you switch up a little bit and people are like, "Hey, that resonates," or "I noticed
Mhm.
that," or some people don't like it, some people do, which I think is
Right.
will always
Sure.
be the case. But I built my business on the backs of being tactical, right? So like my whole thesis around building my business in the beginning was if I could take things that were really complicated and try
Mhm.
and make them a bit more simple and easy to understand, so that therefore people could take action, that would be beneficial to my customer or my reader, and therefore be beneficial to me, right? So putting the customer's journey in first, that comes back to pay you in the end. That's just how business works,
Right.
right? Help your customer. Um, After doing that for 5 years, there are only so many things you can write about landing page optimization or email sequences or how to write better content and like, listen, are there guys who have written about it longer? Sure. Could I go back and find old topics and write about them through a different lens? Yes. But I wouldn't be being true to myself. And the truth is, it interests me less nowadays, right? Like,
Mm.
I don't care about optimizing my landing pages. I'm not interested in the
Right.
perfect email sequence. What I'm really interested in is going back and looking at my journey now that I'm like 6, 7 years into it, and thinking about all the different things that I wish I would have thought about as I was going through it, right? Energy, outcomes, enoughness, thinking more about the as you said, sort of the holistic stuff around it versus just the cash, or being successful
Mhm.
in business, or how many customers can you get, or whatever that might be. And so I wanted to write about that through the lens of storytelling. And now that my wife and I have been doing some sabbaticals here, we went to France for 3 months, we're in California for 3 months, we're meeting all these really cool and interesting people.
Yeah.
And one thing we've gotten really good at is like, my new newsletter coming up is like, we just went for a wine tasting here in Healdsburg, and we met this really cool, I call him a kid because he was 25, and like
Right.
kind of like brushed him off in the beginning because I thought he was young and wasn't going to know much,
Right.
and it blew my mind. And like, as we were leaving this tasting, I talked to my wife Jennifer about it. I was like, that kid was really amazing. Like, I can't
Yeah.
believe I didn't think he might be that good. Like, I was almost discriminatory, right? And so like
Right.
these things happen to us where we're just like, oh, that's a cool story for a newsletter. And so we just keep the floodgates open of conversation where I'm like, what did you take from that experience? What did you take from that experience? And we're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's interesting. We could put that into a business forward sort of newsletter. And so we've
Yeah.
just been telling stories about all the stuff that we've been going through. That's where it comes from, and it's more interesting to me.
No, I think so. It's I think how people consume stuff, because you can. It's there's the one thing for the tactical, and I read enough of that stuff, right? But then there's another thing to say, okay, here's a story of perspective. Now I get to make my own story up of how I relate it to my business or my life. But
Right.
again, through that story lens, which is really nice. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I've loved the writing. It's
Appreciate it.
again, I'm not to make you blush. Like it's the thing I read every week. I mean, I read a couple like Godin's blog and stuff like that. But there's a couple I read religiously, and yours one of them. So
I appreciate that,
it's
man. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I actually, it's funny you tempted a little bit with like thinking back 6 or 7 years and how do you go forward? How would you have done it a little different? I'm gonna lay a little suspense on the line because I do want to get to rapid fire, and then we're gonna jump into those topics here in just a bit. Okay, you ready for this?
Yeah, let's do
All
it.
right, 5 questions. I don't know what's gonna be pulled.
Okay.
Let's go. All right. What's the most valuable KPI you track and why?
Wow. That's a really good question. Um, I would say, wow, most valuable KPI. I would say the best key performance indicator for my business is simply visitors to intended place. And so, for example, when I was selling courses, which I don't really do much anymore, it was simply visitors to that landing page. I could almost down to a few digits away tell you exactly how many sales. Now I drive it to partner pages, or I drive it to newsletter signups. So
Mhm.
so that to me is indicative of people being interested in the thing that I offer. And so, why that's probably more important than, say, impressions or like on social media posts and stuff like that
Sure.
is I don't really, my impressions kind of ebb and flow, But what I always want to do is keep a consistent number of people going to the thing that they should be interested in, that I want them to be interested in, because that's what flows my business. And I have a very strong belief that what I offer up as products and services in my business are valuable. And so I know that if I can get someone to go look at those and have 3 to 5% of people commit to buying and using those things, they're going to come away happy. And when people come away happy, they drive other customers to my products and services through word of
Sure,
mouth.
yeah.
So like that visitor number has been something that I've tracked really religiously for, 6 years.
Mm. And does it have anything, I'm assuming it has a big thing, we're not talking about it though, is around how that landing page is set up, right? I mean, if it's all over in disarray, no one's going to be able to know where to click. So the simplicity of it, I noticed some of yours with the courses I've taken, it seems like there's a simplistic flow to it at least.
Very, very simple. But the landing page has converted over the years around the same percentage. And like, sure, as AI has come out, like, will I sell as many of my course as I used to? No, it's just not going to happen, right? Information is becoming commoditized quite quickly. But I know now about how many people in this given time frame will convert. And that's what keeps the lights on at my house and the
Yeah,
business running
sure.
and customers happy. And so that's something that I track very religiously.
Okay, cool. All right, here we go. Question number 2. What's one fear you've never fully shaken?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think it's not the primary thing is not the fear. The secondary thing is the fear. So I'll describe that. So one thing that will happen to me, which happens to everybody else, happens to athletes, happens to musicians, unless you're Tom Brady or the Rolling Stones, is I will at some point become completely irrelevant. And that is something I've come to peace with and come to terms with. It generally happens to most people in their field, right? Especially in creative fields. And again, like you can find writers and musicians who that doesn't apply to, but let's just look at the middle 80%. I will likely become irrelevant at some point. That does not scare me. What scares me is who am I after that irrelevancy? So I've been a guy who's written on the internet every day for the last 6 or 7 years, who has millions of followers and hundreds of thousands of readers, and like, who am I when that goes away? It's both scary and also exciting. Like, I think about that day coming with both some trepidation, right? Because there's just the fear of the unknown, but also like complete excitement. You can be whoever you want to be, right? And I think that's like super interesting because I'm a guy who's reinvented his career multiple times. And so like that next reinvention will either be driven by irrelevancy or by my own, like, I'm ready to do something different.
How do you, I guess while we're on the topic, just quickly, when you think back 6, 7 years, like you were the sales executive, you grew, companies, revenue, like all this stuff, that's who your identity was. Do you remember that shift to not being that?
Hardly. I remember my friend Kevin Dorsey, who was my buddy, and he also worked for me. He was my VP of inside sales. Came over one weekend in Los Angeles. I owned my first home in this small little suburb of LA, and Kevin came over to visit me. And we were talking about creating content. We had just kind of both been ramping our game up, and he said, I said to him, all these people are asking me about social media, but I'm trying to write about revenue and healthcare consulting and SaaS businesses and things like that. And he's like, well, why don't you lean into that? And I was like, oh, I guess I could, So I started writing a little bit more about social media, released a social media course. And like, that was so long ago, it was 5.5, 6 years ago, that I almost don't remember what it was like, to be the guy before that. Which is kind of weird and scary in and of itself. Yeah. And then at some point in my life, in the next probably 5 years, I will forget what it's like to be doing what I'm doing right now, and will be immersed in some other interesting journey. I think that's the fun part of life. I think expertise is boring. Like, I know that's a weird way to think about it, but like, I can't imagine doing the same thing every day for 40 years, like, or being in the same career. I think that's boring. I think starting at zero and like going 0 to 1 in something new is so exciting and fun. I have a 5-year shelf life in everything I do. Like, I get bored easily and I want to reinvent myself. And so that's probably someday in the future,
No, I love that. Well, when you start that brewery, we'll come have you back on the podcast. All right, here we go. Number 3. What's the meeting you refuse to miss every week?
I have a financial meeting with my wife every Monday morning. And so my wife is a real self-taught sort of financial person. Her dad was a stockbroker. She's always been interested in finances. I grew up with a fear of money from
Mm,
parental stuff and things like
mm,
that. So a fear of finances, and I'm running out of money. I have that money sort of
right.
scarcity mindset sometimes. So every Monday morning, we've done this for almost 6 years. We look at what the business make, how much do we need to set aside for taxes, how much should we invest in the stock market, what do we want to set aside for savings, um, a bunch of different levers. What's our net worth? Just tracking things, and like I track it meticulously, and I don't
Mm,
think I've missed it in 315 weeks in a row, I would imagine.
wow. Wow. And how long is that meeting?
20 minutes. Like
Okay.
I fill out all the information likely before my wife even wakes up. And then when she gets up, like I'm usually a 20-ounce coffee deep, and I'm rattling off everything to her, and she's like, "Let me have a cup of coffee first before we talk about this." But like, we just talk about it and just directionally, how are things going? Did we over? Oh, we track our expenses. Like, how much did we spend? Did we spend too much? Why did we spend? Like, do we buy something different than we normally do? Like, we just keep an eye on everything. Most
Yeah.
people will tell you should do it every month or every quarter. We like doing it weekly because we like to see trends and patterns, and if something is going poorly, kind of kill that before it becomes a habit.
Hmm. Yeah, love that. All right, here we go. Question 4. Who is a mentor that was a big part of you becoming who you are?
Cyrus Masumi, the founder and CEO of a company called ZocDoc in New York.
Hmm.
I recently wrote about it, actually, where
Yeah.
by the time I turned 28, I had zero success in my career. And very candidly, I mean, I'm a different person now, but like I didn't have a good brag book, right? I had no success. So I like made one up, right? Like I went and like, this is back before like the internet was really big, and I like went to like FedEx or Kinko's or something and like fudged a brag book, right? Like I made it up. And I wiggled my way into an interview for the first or second sales guy role at a company called ZocDoc in New York. There was like 11 people in the company, real small. Got the job, and Cyrus threw me in a territory as the CEO, and I like made a couple sales and then started becoming really good at it and loved it. And he just gave me a chance, man. Like he moved me to San Francisco and gave me a raise without me asking, and was like, go build the business out there. And then he moved me to Boston and then LA. And then I took over the West Coast. And then I reported directly to him, working with VCs, trying to raise awareness for like a secondary product. There was just like, it was this crazy. I went from sucking at everything I ever did to being extremely good at everything I did in a compressed period of time. And it was
Hmm.
simply because he gave me a lot of chances and believed in me. And he was hard to work for. He's a hard guy
Yeah.
to work for. But like, I look back and think, thank God someone like kicked my ass in gear.
Man. Did he ever tell you like what he saw in you specifically?
He did. I recall having a conversation where I called him from LA and just put my fears out to him, that like I was always worried about losing my job. Like I always had that fear.
Hmm.
And he told me, and he said, I will never fire you. And I said, oh, like it was a company that if you didn't perform, you got fired. Um, and I asked why. And basically, I don't remember the exact words, but it was something around, I said yes to everything. So it's like, do you want to move to San Francisco? Sure. Want to move to Boston? Yep. LA? Yep. Want to come back here and do this? Sure, totally. And like, I just said yes to everything, and then I
Hmm.
performed at it. And I became like an intrapreneur there,
Hmm.
where I was kind of like Mr. Fix It, right? Where
Hmm.
if there was a problem, you could just throw me into the mix and I would just figure it out. And I think the intrinsic value of that is what he saw in me and why he continued to give me chances.
Hmm. Yeah, it's hard to find people that you can rely on. So I imagine, in his position, absolutely. How many we got here? 2, 3. Okay, I think we got one more. All right, Justin, here we go. If you could put one message in every fortune cookie, what would it be?
Oh, and these are really good. Um,
Thank you.
I would probably say put yourself in rooms where there are opportunities. Um, I know that's very simple, but what I see amongst, I'll call them younger people, but I'm sure it extends to folks my age, is like this unwillingness, and it ties back to my story about ZocDoc, to
Mhm.
like put yourself in situations where you can win. So like, did I want to move to San Francisco from New York 8 months after I got there? Nope. And a lot of people would be like, "Nah, I'm not. Oh, my, I got my dog and every reason under the sun to not say yes. Yes, uh-huh. Is better
Yeah.
opportunity? Hell yeah. Did I want to move to Boston? Absolutely not. Like that was the last. No offense to Boston, but like I just didn't want to
Yeah.
live there. But like I saw the opportunity and I was like, great, let's do it. And when I talk to people, they often tell me about reasons they can't do something
Mhm.
and very rarely about reasons why they could. And I think by saying yes and putting yourself in these rooms where you can like say yes to things and take on new opportunities and be in a different place,
Mhm.
especially when you're younger, right? It's harder when you have kids. I understand that. I'm not trying to be non-empathetic, but especially when you're younger, man, just like say yes, get into rooms where people are interesting and you have cool opportunities, and just be a yes man or a yes woman for sure.
Yeah. What's the quote? I think it's Edison, where it's like opportunities often overlooked because it looks like hard work and it's covered in overalls and looks like hard work. And I kind of, and I'm not blaming the younger generations. As a millennial, I think when we were younger, it was probably the same. There's kind of this like, oh, I've been in a job for 6 months. I need to get promoted. Like, give me the
Yeah.
thing. And it's not like go out and work, go out and show it, like prove it. Let them ask you because you've done so much.
Yeah, and it's definitely not a younger generation thing. It's just I
Mhm.
more so happen to be talking to younger folks who are looking for
Right.
advice versus guys my own age.
Right.
And so I just see, and again, it's not in everyone. I'm painting with a broad brush here, but like I do see some what I would call unwillingness,
Mhm.
and I recognize that moving or changing roles is hard. Um, but every good thing is hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I even think, I mean, I don't, let's just even take a small scale, right? Because I've even thought about this, as we were talking about right before we started recording, I'm making this jump to full time solopreneurship. And it's something, I've been fortunate just coming from the golf industry years ago and stuff. Like it's important to shake hands and kiss babies, like the whole idea there. It's like, but like even finding like local events or groups in your area just to be able to go out, get in those right rooms, as you're saying, just to meet people that you never would have met sitting behind the desk, right? Especially if you're working remote.
Totally. And again, especially if you're younger. And I say that only because like I'm a 45-year-old guy who has been 35 and 30 and 25 and 20. And
Yeah.
I'm just telling you that your energy isn't quite what it used to be. So like when you have energy, and of course there will be people who stay in better shape than I do, but like when you have energy, use it, right? Use those moments to like go out and do the thing that you might not do as easily when you're 45 or 50.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a good time because the word energy has come up a couple times. You mentioned that a little while ago when you're like, "Hey, how would I have thought differently about 6 years ago when you made that jump?" Can we go down that path a little bit? Because I'm kind of curious. Maybe this would be helpful. I think for a lot self-serving, probably a little bit since again I'm making this jump. But I think for anyone around the solopreneurship route, if they're thinking about doing it, how would you think a little differently from 6 years ago? Let's start there, and then maybe we can pull on a couple of those, leaves.
Yeah. I think nowadays with AI and all Claude co-work and all this stuff that I don't know all that much about, right? I
Mhm.
very, very candidly don't know. You have a lot more of an ability to be like a machine gunner. You can try so many different things so fast. And I think that is really, really useful. Back when I started, I wanted to give myself the best opportunity to be successful while also leaving open a door for returning to the workforce should I not be. So,
Mhm.
like, when I rewind, I can talk about some of the good things that I did, which was number one, I saved some money. So I set aside like 6 months, excuse me, worth of runway. Now, not everyone is in that situation. I get
Mhm.
that. But if you
Yeah.
are in that situation, I highly recommend setting it aside. Number two, I built my pipeline before I left my job. So I left my job on August 1st of 2019, and I spent September of 18 through August of 19, so almost a full year, creating content on the internet that was specifically targeted and aimed at founders and CEOs of healthcare startups, talking about the experience that I had. I'd built this business. I'd helped build ZocDoc into $1 billion valuation. Patient Pop wasn't too far behind that. And I had all these folks coming to me saying, hey man, we could really use your help, really use your help. And I kept saying, in time, in time, in time. Like, I think in Q2 of next year, I'm going to be available for some more consulting or something like that. So I built this sort of bench of opportunities that I knew I could at least turn on a percentage of those when I was ready. The third thing that I did that I thought was relatively intelligent was didn't burn any bridges, went out the absolute right way. When I went to give my company what you would call a 2 weeks, I gave them a 6 months. And that was really well received by both the co-CEOs of Patient Pop. I wrote a letter and sat down with the board around my decision. So I maintained board relationships and VC relationships. And so this sort of triangle, 3 sides, right? Like, I had the money set aside, I had the opportunities in terms of pipeline, and I had the relationships. And by having those 3 things, I was able to exit and know I haven't burnt any bridges. I've got good relationships. If I want to get a VP of sales or a CRO job, I can probably do that again. But I also gave myself the best chance to succeed. Yeah. And that's why I always write it online, like, don't just quit your job and go all in on a whim. Like, have a plan, right? And like, if you don't succeed, what's the risk reduction plan? Like, when I was a CRO and I built a plan for how we were going to hit our targets and I presented it to the board, I inevitably knew the number one question was, what's going to go wrong? And if it goes wrong, what's the risk plan? Like, how do you plug the risk? And so I built my runway and I built my business, going out on a limb with a risk reduction plan. So like, if this fails, then this. If this fails, then this. And so by having that sort of strategic plan, I think you put yourself in a good position to at least increase the likelihood that you succeed.
Did you ever read the book When to Jump by Mike Lewis?
I did. It was the primary book that drove my decision. Yeah.
And, interesting.
I ended up getting a chance to have a really cool hour-long conversation with him like many years later. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, actually, I'm fortunate to have him on the podcast after I read the book several years ago. And same thing to you. It's like it was very impactful. But to your point, like talking about, give yourself that runway, like put the plan in place when you're going to leave. Don't just kind of do it on a whim. So yeah, it was. And by the way, the book, you had gave a suggestion about a month ago, The Pathless Path.
Yeah, Paul.
And I actually just bought it and I've been reading it. It's a really good book, but it's kind of like some similar through lines to it, to When to Jump, of like thinking differently about. But yeah, anyways, like I said, I like the books. I appreciate you sharing that as well.
Yeah, Paul Millard is a great author, a good friend of mine, and his books, Pathless Path and Good Work, are both excellent.
Okay, Good Work. I haven't. Okay.
Both really good. I bought 50 copies of The Pathless Path just to hand out to friends. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Well, I want to go back. One thing that was I think 2 kind of strings to pull on there. The first is, tell me about, I almost can assume just with the way you talk about your wife and stuff like that, but what was the support at home? Like, how was that, either not just during that period, but maybe in the couple of years prior? Because I'm assuming you were talking about it or thinking about it. Just kind of, how did the support at home, what was the temperature like there? How did that go?
It was a difficult time leading up to me starting my business. So what happened was when was it? In December of, I think it was 2018. I might get the date wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was December of 2018. I had a really big panic attack. I've talked about it before. It was my first panic attack. I've since had 2 more. They become not regular recurring things, but if I find myself in a position where I burn out a little bit, that's the unfortunate outcome. But that was my first one. And I had just been sleeping very little, eating a lot, drinking a lot, exercising very little, not taking care of myself because I was so stressed about work back in 2018. And this is ultimately what would become the crux of me leaving my job. And my wife was tired. She was tired of me being physically and mentally not present,
Mm,
right? Like I was in the office so often. I was, and when I got home, like I was just numbing myself, right? Like a bottle of wine, a lot of food, and just like numb because I just couldn't stand to be with myself, if that makes sense.
mm,
And so she was sick and tired of that shit, to be quite honest. And I think when I said I'm going to start my own business, one of the things that I did after the panic attack was I started training. I stopped drinking alcohol for a long time. I started eating healthy. I lost like 40 pounds, and like I had this renewed spirit. So she was fully supportive in that journey. Not so much because she's a supportive wife, which of course she is. She's an
yeah,
extraordinarily supportive wife, but she just didn't have an option, right? Like
yeah,
she just needed to get her husband back, and so it was she was forced into that, right? But
yeah.
she's always been supportive of everything that I've wanted to do. She's my number one fan and my biggest support system, and so I'm very lucky because I know other people, friends of mine and coworkers and colleagues who have spouses who are less supportive in that way.
Mm. Did you know? Again, thinking back, and I know we were talking about when to jump, and you said that was kind of a big thing for you. Did you always like, and always might be a wrong because you made it not when you were 10 years old, but like, did you always feel like you were meant for something different than corporate? Like, did you ever feel like you didn't fit in at all, or was that something that happened more later stage before you left?
I never thought of myself as someone who would be an entrepreneur. I didn't think of like that wasn't an option. I don't
Mm,
I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. Um, I don't know how I didn't never knew how to start a business. Like I didn't know any of that stuff. Like I didn't oh I have this thing I'm going to do. I'm made I'm supposed to be an entrepreneur. I will say something that will sound like a God complex, but I can assure you is not.
okay.
It's just a weird feeling that I've always had that like I was meant to be something more important on the planet than a guy who builds healthcare companies. Like
Yeah.
I never thought that that was my ultimate be all end all. Like on my gravestone, it was gonna be like builder of healthcare companies, right? Like that.
Yeah.
That's just not
Yeah.
what I saw. I just didn't know what it was. I've always had pretty decent self confidence and thought I was smart and could figure things out, and but I just didn't know what it was going to be. And I still don't think it's what I'm doing now, to be quite frank with you. But like
Yeah.
having that feeling certainly allowed me to lean into starting my own business and saying, is this the thing? And again, it's a cool thing that's happened and a helpful thing, and I've impacted a lot of people, but I still don't think it's the thing.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, I appreciate you sharing there because I think there's a lot like myself and a lot of the people I talk to, it's almost like something you can't put your finger on, but there is this like idea of like you're in a box and like you want to explode out. There's other things you feel like you can do, like whether it's a mission or purpose, whether it's a job or just something, more kind of aspirational on like a nonprofit side. But I think a lot of us feel it, but we can't pinpoint. And then we don't know what to do with it. It's like, well, maybe should I do a business or whatever? And I think it's a real struggle.
Yeah, I think one of the cool realizations that some people never have it. A lot of people have it, which is like when you realize that life is basically like a video game where you're like, I can kind of do whatever I want. Like you might not be successful, by the way, like, but
Yeah.
you can try. And like, if I want to open a brewery, Brian, I can do that. All I have to do
Yeah.
is have passion, have discipline, have consistency, have focus, and I can go do that. I'm opening a brewery doesn't require a special person. It requires a
Yeah.
person who cares a lot about that thing.
Yeah.
And like I read a tweet the other day and I couldn't find it when I went back to find it about a guy who was a reporter and he's like, I always wanted to be a kickboxer, but I had never set foot in a ring or thrown a punch before. So I just trained over the last year and I entered a kickboxing competition and I beat a guy. And I was
Mm,
like, when you see that you can just do whatever you want and no one's stopping you and you're
yeah.
in total control of your life, like it unlocks the ability to be like, I'm multi-passionate and now I want to do something new. And 5 years from
Yeah.
now, I want to do something else new. I think that's a really cool unlock when you realize that.
Yeah. Well, that's how the podcast started. like the reason the Just Get Started podcast exists, because I was going to do something like, I'm a big 49ers fan. I love golf. Like I had all these ideas like, oh, what would I do it on? Because I wanted to start a podcast for 2 years, but didn't. But one day I'm just like, and I kept hemming and hawing over it. I'm like, dude, just get started. Like, just do the dang thing. Like, try it. Do it a little bit. You don't have to, you don't have to be Joe Rogan. It doesn't have to be some massive thing. Just do it and kind of put it out there. And I think that's the thing a lot of people get scared of. I know for most of my life it was like, what's the harm in trying? And just, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be your everything. And so anyways, I think that's, I think hopefully maybe inspiration for others is like, just try it. Do it today. Like, do it this week. Try it this month. Like, go out and do something that's totally unique and different than you've ever done, because you just want to do it. To your point, it's a fucking game. Enjoy it.
Every business, every person you admire started by just trying.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Okay. So a couple more things on this. And when you think about, again, you talked about like the way you think now versus 6 years ago. So someone that's starting out, whether they're already into the business or again, it's their first time kind of going at it. How would you think about structuring the business? So not talking more the tactical, like, again, do this, website thing, but more like that holistic, going back to how would you encourage someone to say, hey, look at these corners that you're not even thinking of, these blind spots that I didn't uncover until doing it for 5-6 years?
Yeah, there are generally there are three basic pieces to the puzzle in my opinion. And they're very boring and they're very fundamental and they're very foundational. And I'll work backwards. Actually, let's work forwards. So the very first thing that you have to have, I'm actually going to start in the middle. So sorry for kind of, because
that's good.
As I think this through, I think starting in the middle is going to be most helpful. So in the middle is just understanding whomever your target audience is and their most painful problem. I call it a bleeding neck problem. Okay. So like, for example, if you have a problem that's just like, if you nick your finger or something like that, you might just be like, I could get a Band-Aid, but I might not get a Band-Aid, but my store's kind of far away. Whatever, right? I need some Neosporin, might not. If you have a bleeding neck, right? Like, sorry for the graphic thing, like you're stabbed in the neck, you don't give a shit about what color the Band-Aid is, how much it costs, how much the ambulance costs. You need it out there now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you have to find a problem in your target audience that people are willing to pay for today because it is so painful to solve, right? And that's different across every industry, but generally it relates to saving time, making money or saving money, being accepted, right? Or improving relationships. Those are generally the things it revolves around. That's like the middle sort of hub, if you will. The spokes are, do you know how to get attention for it, i.e. marketing, right? Mm-hmm. You can understand your customer's deepest pain in and out from top to bottom, right? But if you don't know how to talk about it and show other people that you are aware of their bleeding neck problem, then you have a hobby. You don't have a business yet, because businesses need marketing and leads. And the last thing you need is an offer, and an offer that solves that problem in a way that is different than somebody else who solves it. Either better, faster, cheaper, with a higher degree of likelihood. If you have those three things, deeply understanding your bleeding neck problem of your audience, having a unique and differentiating way to solve that problem, and then being able to talk about that and get attention for it. If you can do those three things, you have a business. If you can only do two of those three things, you generally do not have a business. If you can get attention and you understand their pain, but you can't solve it, you don't have a business, right? If you can solve a problem and you understand the pain, but you can't get any attention for it, you can't find customers and you can't get leads, you don't have a business. And so what I often talk to people about is, lots of us are experts in our lives. We have some level of expertise, some skill, some knowledge, but you don't have the offer, you don't understand the problem, and you can't get attention. You have to be able to do those three things, and do those three things very effectively, or you're probably not ready to launch a business.
And would it, in terms of thinking, and I obviously take this because I come from a sales background as well, is like that whole bleeding neck problem. how would you get someone, again, because we might think about it more just from, again, from sales background, you can kind of think about, but someone that's like doesn't have a sales background, doesn't really, they're coming from a totally different angle. How would you get them like their own specific problem that they're trying to solve, like the bleeding neck? Can you give a couple more maybe examples? Or I'm just trying to, because some folks would be like, okay, that sounds great. How do I write that though? Like, you know how this from a sales side, most people like they talk about the surface level problem. They never get 2 or 3 or 4 levels deeper.
Right. Right. Sure. So I'll give you an example. So I talk to a lot of people in my line of work, and they come to me and they're like, you know what I do? What do you do? I build high converting landing pages. Cool. Great. What does that mean for your customer? Well, they'll make more sales. Great. Nobody goes to bed going, I'm so scared that I can't make more sales. What people say is, I'm currently $30,000 behind in what I need to make for my family to survive, right? That's more of a bleeding neck problem. Same problem, right? More sales, $30,000 behind what I need to survive, framed in very different ways. So what you need to do as a person is to dig into their problem. Oh, my landing page isn't converting. What do you mean by that? Oftentimes when people tell me their landing page isn't converting, they mean one of two things. Either it used to be converting at 4, 5, 6%, whatever, and now it's converting at half. Or what they actually mean is they used to get 1,000 visitors a month and now they're getting 500 visitors a month. Or is it something else? Which one is it for you? Call that the rule of two. You give them two directions to go, and at the end you say, if it's neither of those two, tell me the third direction. That gives someone the permission to say, oh, well, what I actually mean is the first one. My landing page used to convert at 10% and now it converts at 5%.
Yep.
Wow, that's half of a problem. Tell me, what have you tried? How did it work? I tried buying another landing page. I tried spending 30 hours of time building a new landing page. 30 hours of your own time? Wow. What does that cost? $500 an hour, 15,000 bucks. How much did you spend on that new landing page? 10,000 bucks, $25,000 down the drain and hasn't solved the problem. Okay, cool. So right now we're bleeding 25K and we haven't solved the problem. Interesting. And you mentioned that you used to get 1,000 visitors and converted 10%. Now it's 5%. What's your average revenue per user? Oh, it's $1,000. Okay, so you used to do 100,000 and now you're doing 50,000. So there's a $50,000 problem. Am I understanding this correctly? That you're bleeding about 75K, 50K per month that you're missing out, but also the 25K of your own time and energy that you've invested in? Yeah, wow, that sounds about right. Cool. What's that doing? Like, is it keeping you up at night? Is it driving a wedge in between you and your family? Are you behind on your bills? Tell me a little bit about that. Yeah, my wife's really pissed. We can't afford the things we want to afford. Got it. Sounds like a real big problem. But you know what? I don't know your business that well. You might have problems that are 2 and 3 levels of priority above this. In terms of priority, is this top priority, number 2, number 5? It's priority number 1. Wow, cool. When do you want to get this solved by? I'd love to get this solved by March 1st. That's a pretty specific date. Can you tell me a little bit more about why March 1st? Yeah, I've got a big, huge product launch it's launching. Oh my God, you're bleeding 50K a month. You're spending 25K of your own money and all your time, and you've got a product launch coming and you know you're going to perform at half? Man, how much is that product? Down the rabbit hole we go. And all we're trying to do is make this problem existential. You're trying to stick a knife in someone's heart and twist it. Now, that sounds mean, but you're trying to get the prospect to realize, holy shit, this is a problem, right?
Yeah.
If you can do that, you found a bleeding neck problem, and now you pivot and you tell them how your offer works, how you solve it, how much it'll cost, why it's unique, so on and so forth. That's just like sales 101 for me, but I did sales for 20 years.
No. You're right. Well, that was a nice little sales masterclass. So
I was like ad-libbing off the top of my head.
No, but it's
probably don't work and everything, but I was just going off the top of my head.
But you're right, because I have this conversation all the time with folks that are like, and the biggest excuse that's made is like, well, Brian, I know the business really well. I don't have to ask that. I don't want it to sound dumb, like I don't know their business. I'm like, no. You don't know their business. You might understand how the business is structured, but you don't know their business. You got to get to the specifics, to what you just said. You got to ask those questions, because because you had this problem, maybe you're trying to solve the similar thing, doesn't mean they actually know.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's the same. Doesn't mean that, their problem is your problem.
I often hear like people come to me and say, well, my business, what I help do is I help foster better team communication. I'm like, nobody goes to bed and can't sleep having nightmares about better team communication.
Yeah.
Like, if it doesn't hurt, if it doesn't keep them up at night, it's not a bleeding neck problem.
Yeah. That I got 100%. So that's hopefully people will take that. And I think you're right starting with the middle, because if you don't have that, who cares what attention you get because you're not attracting the right people, and who cares if you have an offer because no one's gonna want it because you don't know how to talk about the problem.
Old vitamin painkiller stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, this is really good, Justin. Well, I guess on that point, anything to wrap up? Any other thoughts, comments for someone that, again, trying to get started in solopreneurship, entrepreneurship, starting their own business?
Yeah, totally. It's a long game, right? So like one of the worst things that has happened to the solopreneur and entrepreneur space is the proliferation of expedient revenue. So like guys and gals on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever being like, 18 months ago, I left my job and today I'm making $2 million a year. That happens, right? I've seen it happen. Those are outliers. How many people who tried the same thing did not make $2 million a year, right? It's the old survivorship bias. And so what I would say to folks who want to do this is don't hold up me or anybody else who has made money on the internet as like who you want to be or the route you want to follow or the speed at which you want to execute. A lot of luck and timing, right? I would hate to find out. I would hate for you to copy everything that I've done only to find out that my luck and timing wasn't on your side. And so what I would say is like goals, decades, strategy, yearly, tactics, quarterly, effort, daily.
That's it. That's the formula.
I just randomly happened to tweet that today, so that was fresh in my head.
Well, and the thing that I guess I'm going to underscore one thing is, even if they did everything that you did, maybe they're not happy. That might not be what they want anyways. So that's at the end of it. That's what it's all about anyways, if you're going to do it, you know?
Totally.
Last question. I always like to end on. So again, just get started podcasts. People are sitting out there like, oh yeah, I need to get going. What one action item would you tell them? Like, what's that? Hey, take this first step today or this week to help them on their way to get started. Anything you would give them?
I think one of the things I love that's really simple is to find 3 to 5 people that you know who have had the problem that you're trying to solve. Ask them if you can spend 15 minutes having a conversation with them about that problem, and then take them, if they've already solved it, take them back in time and ask them to describe the problem, how it felt, both personally, emotionally, in their family, on their bank account. Just ask them to talk about it and ask them to be as candid and transparent as possible. If they're not, peel the onion back a little bit, get to some of those emotional words: fear, nightmare, couldn't believe it, struggling, right? Like find those words, but also find how they talk about it. What are like the industry specific terms they use? And today with AI, man, you can just record those conversations, dump them into Claude or whatever your LLM of choice is, and say, can you analyze these conversations and then talk back to me? How would someone describe this problem? Like in the most, what are the words they commonly use? What are the phrases? What's the language? To me, once you like figure that out, all your content revolves around that. Your offer revolves around that. Like that hub again is just understanding how your customers talk about their big problems.
I think, that's tremendous advice. And again, it gets back to number 2. How do you get number 2 to start this off? You got to know what they're talking about. So yeah, that's great advice. Justin, my God, time flies as usual. I certainly appreciate this. People can probably find you on LinkedIn. I bet they type in your name, your website, justinwelsh.me, I think. Is that the best domain, right? Anywhere else are you still on Twitter or X?
Yeah, I'm still on X at the Justin Welsh, and I'm on Substack if you want to look up my name on Substack. But that's it, man. Just come to the website, check it out, see if it's relevant to you, and if it is, feel free to reach out.
I appreciate it, Justin. Thank you so much for being on, man.
Thanks for having me, man. Really, really good job interviewing.
Appreciate it.